Hi, happy Wednesday. I'm Mandy Clem with Insperity and happy to be hosting today with Heather Steele, founder of Blue Steel Solutions, and lead content writer Adam Fout. I wanted to partner with Heather and Adam to bring you this webinar because they focus on helping you grow your business. And at Insperity, we do the same, with a focus on taking care of your most valuable asset, your people. From recruiting to exit interviews and really fun stuff like payroll taxes and compliance, we handle everything under the HR umbrella. Insperity offers Fortune 100 healthcare benefits to small businesses to change the success equation of their business. So a little about me. Before Insperity, I worked for over 10 years in the nonprofit industry. I'm an avid wildlife supporter, having grown up in Zimbabwe. I have lived in Texas for 14 years and enjoy hanging with my family outdoors. That's just part of my story, and you'll learn in just a few minutes why it's important to me to share it with you. We have the chat feature available, so feel free to enter questions in the chat box. We'll get to those at the end. And with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Heather.
I want you to imagine for a minute that you only have the ability to communicate in the most basic mands and expressions. This is my son, Travis. When Travis was 2, we went to a birthday party with a bunch of other 2-year-olds. We realized that these other 2-year-olds were talking a lot, and Travis didn't talk at all at this point. Now, we didn't really pick up on this being a problem because he has an older sister who started talking really early, and she just never stopped. And we had always heard that boys develop a little slower. Sometimes boys don't talk until they're 2 or even 3. Sometimes boys with older sisters that talk a whole lot don't need to talk because their older sisters do everything for them. So we didn't really think there was a problem until we were at this party and saw all these other little chatty 2-year-olds who could talk a lot. So we spent a year doing speech evaluations, hearing exams, weekly therapy, and by the time he was 3, he still wasn't talking. He was starting to have some behavior problems. We finally went and got a diagnosis of autism, and we started some intensive therapy. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, doing everything we could to catch him up to his peers. Over 4 years later, Travis still doesn't talk. His behaviors have become pretty extreme. When he's happy, he's the most energetic, smiling, bubbly little guy you have ever met. But when he's unhappy, he can be pretty violent. He has a lot of behavior problems. He has developed a little bit of language, and he can identify about 20 objects. He has a list of about 7 words that he uses pretty frequently. Bacon, car, sucker, outside, swing, bed, and jump. Those are pretty important words when you're almost 8-year-old. He can let us know what he wants for the most part, but Travis has no ability to really have a conversation. He can't tell me about his day. He can't tell me what he dreams about. He can't tell me what he wants to be when he grows up. He can't even tell me if he knows that he's different than the other kids his age. Despite all the awesome memories Travis has, and he's done a lot of great things. He's gone to Disney World. He gets to go play at a cattle ranch. He's a kid who has an indoor swing. He has a pretty awesome life. He does so many things, but he has no way of telling his story to anyone. He also works so hard. I mean, he's an 8-year-old kid that's pretty much had a full-time job since he was 3, trying to learn how to communicate and how to interact in social ways. He's worked his ass off, and he has no way to tell that story to anyone. All of us on this webinar right now, we are so damned privileged to have the ability to tell our stories. We're able to communicate in an impactful and meaningful way with other humans, and we have no idea how lucky we are to do that until we see someone who can't. And yet, we rarely get it right when it comes to trying to use these stories to communicate for our business. As humans, we know that stories are really important to survival, right? Like, don't eat those berries because they will give you the shits. Don't cuddle with that Tasmanian devil because he's kind of a jerk. The ability to tell stories is a really important part of our evolution. But it's about more than just evolving and surviving. When we tell stories to each other, our bodies produce oxytocin, which helps make us feel safe and connected. So story-driven content marketing tends to focus on characters and emotions and ideas that can paint a picture of how the world can be a little bit better than the one that we're living in now. It helps us connect on a deeper level. It helps us bring our audience of potential customers and partners together in a way that simple lists of features and benefits and pricing just can't do. When you use story-based content, you're more likely to have people recall what you told them. And you have a much greater influence over their emotions and behaviors that they actually take away after they've consumed your content. Now, I'm a marketer. My success is directly correlated to the financial success of my clients. So I get it. I get that we have this temptation to sell every time we're in front of a client. Every time we have a piece of content that a lead might see, every time that we're posting on social media. We're really tempted to make that an opportunity to just sell, sell, sell. Get the sale, get the lead, move on, go to the next one. But today, I want to help you get back to understanding that these utterances of what we do, why we're better, the price, that is not the stuff that matters. I want you to remember that the reason marketers can't stop buzzing about this word content is because great content actually works. It's just storytelling. When you use that to grow your business and market your business, it works so much better. And we think back to some of the original, well, I won't say original because content marketing has been happening since we were able to communicate. But if we think back to the 1940s when direct mail and direct response mail was kind of the original piece of content marketing. You had people sending a letter to someone. Their content, their story had to be so good that the recipient of that letter was going to sit down, write a check, put it in an envelope, and send it back to the product that they were just told about. That's what story-based content is all about. It's about painting that picture and creating a world people actually want to live in through your story. Now, don't worry. I'm here today to make sure you walk away with some really concrete information. It's not just going to be these ethereal ideas about stories. So I'm Heather Steele. I'm the founder and CEO of Blue Steel Solutions. We're a digital marketing firm that produces content to help our customers grow. And joining me is my colleague, Adam Fout. He's our lead content writer. Adam's going to help me stay on track and actually make sure that you guys walk away with some tangible things that you can apply to your business. The tools and processes we're going to talk about today, they really do help. They're the same tools and processes we've used with our clients to help them get some really massive growth. We've seen our clients get more leads and customers than they've ever had before, and they're also able to reduce the cost of getting those leads and customers, sometimes 30 to 60%. Like I said, it really is effective. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Adam so he can talk a little bit more about why you might want to invest in content for your business.
Hello, thanks Heather. So I'm Adam Fout. I'm the lead content writer at Blue Steel Solutions. And what I want to talk to you about today is, Heather's got this story-based stuff. It's really great, but I want to talk in a more practical sense about why we need content in the first place, why anyone, any business, any blogger needs content in the first place. So to do that, we need to think about why anyone needs content in the first place. When you think about why you use the internet, why anyone uses the internet, the only reason people use the internet is because they're looking for information of some sort. Now, that information can be broadly defined, but when I get online, I'm looking for some piece of information, some piece of content. Sometimes it's very small. I need a phone number. Sometimes it's much larger. I want to learn what the best SUV is for 2018. I want to learn how to, change all the light fixtures in my house. I want to read some free short stories. I want to watch a video about modern aircraft carriers. So I'm looking for information, and that's how everyone uses the internet. They're looking for information to learn, to be entertained, to complete a task. So when we're looking for this information, remember there's millions and billions of people using the internet, constantly being searched. So when I'm creating content, my goal as a business owner is to get people onto my site to generate that traffic. But my goal as a user is to find an answer to my question. And so where those two things align, something that someone's looking for and an answer that you can provide that in some way relates to what you do, that's where, content becomes effective. It gets people on your website who might not get there otherwise. Because when those things align, I end up on your website, I find an answer to my question, and then you've got that traffic. So most business owners need to get people on their website to introduce them to a product or a service, possibly to hire them. Bloggers want people there just to consume the content itself and hopefully click on an ad or an affiliate link. These are kind of the main goals for two separate types of businesses and the reasons they have websites. So over here we have people on the website and we're trying to sell them something. Over here we have people and we're trying to hire them. Over here we just want people to come on and stay and interact. All of those people need content to draw people there in the first place. That's what content does. And once you get to a certain level of traffic, you can worry a bit less about this. And it's a situation is slightly different for bloggers. But once you've got that audience built in the, once you've built up this audience, you don't have to worry as much about, the quality of your content and stuff like that. But it's the people who are in the beginning who just want to get people on the website in the first place who don't have any traffic. That's where content can really help to set that foundation to start generating traffic to your website that you might not get otherwise. So it gets you found is what content does. It answers a question your target audience has. The content shows people you know what you're talking about and simultaneously introduces them to your brand. So that's another thing that content does for you. Is it doesn't just get people on the website. It establishes you as a knowledgeable source. It establishes you as somebody who knows what they're talking about, and it starts to build a relationship. So you're generating traffic and hopefully you're getting some leads out of that. But at a more basic level, you're creating a relationship with these people who may not be customers today or even in 6 months, but who will probably eventually become a customer. Now, content does all those things. When I talk about content, I mean blog posts, videos, images, audio clips, podcasts, downloadables, ebooks, product comparisons, white papers, anything that someone would want to consume. And sometimes it's paid, sometimes it's free. Most of what we're talking about is done free. Content marketing is the idea of creating useful, valuable, free content that starts a relationship, answers a question, proves to people you know what you're talking about, and gets them on the website so that they have a low barrier entry to getting to know your business, and then they go on from there to hopefully make some sort of a purchase. Or again, if you're a blogger, maybe to start clicking some affiliate links or some ads. So everyone's business is different. The type of content you produce, the way it looks is going to be very different. So these are some broad strokes that I'm giving here, but you have to really look at your business. It's not going to be appropriate for someone who builds houses to write a blog post about cars and vice versa. That's obvious stuff, but you have to think about your audience, who you want to work with. That's the kind of content you need to produce, stuff that's going to help them. So a lot of it's experimentation. But the idea I want to get in your head today is you need to be producing it in the first place. You need to be producing something that draws people to your website. Most marketers, most business owners, whether you own the business yourself or you're working at a much larger business, you have a website. Oftentimes they're not producing content, or almost worse, they're producing it very haphazardly. They wonder why no one visits. So I have a friend, he does window cleaning, and he says no one comes to his website, right? And I said, well, why would they come to your website? Let's think about it. Do you have advertisements that tell them your website exists? He says no. So I'm like, you don't have any ads on search engines. You don't have social media ads, no TV, no radio, no billboards, no newspaper ads, nothing pointing back to your website. And he says, well, no. And I said, well, what are you creating on the website that holds value then? Because if you're not paying people to get over there, paying someone to attract people over there, then you need to have something there in the first place that attracts them by itself, by its own virtue. And I said, are you creating anything that holds value, that's interesting, any content that someone would want to read or consume? And he says, well, no, I have nothing. I just have a few sentences on each page, and it says, this is who we are and this is what we do. And I said, well, you better hope that Google and the other search engines have figured out who you are and what you do, and has decided to show that to people randomly above all the other people who clean windows. but that's going to take some time, not only because you don't have anything pushing people onto the website in the terms of advertising, you don't have anything pulling people to the website in terms of content marketing, but you barely have enough on the website itself so that the search engines can figure out what it is you're doing there on a first place. Now that's a separate content conversation, but even your main pages need to be filled out and deep, so that not only people can go on there and learn who you are and what you do and why they should work with you, but so that the search engines can figure out who you are and what you do and why they should tell someone who's searching, hey, look at this website instead of a million others. Now, reviews can help with that a lot, even if you don't have a lot of content, if you get a lot of reviews. But again, in the early stages and even later, a lot of established businesses struggle to get reviews. They don't have a process in place. All those things get people to your website. But search engines ultimately are not people. They're a combination of algorithms that are sophisticated, but they still need time to figure out who you are and what you do. When you create content, especially written content, but video too, and images and stuff, it gives the search engines something to grasp onto. If all the search engines have are a couple of sentences on your, even if all they have are your main pages, they can still struggle for a while to figure out who you are and what you do and why that content should matter to anyone, why they should serve you up instead of someone else. And so when you're regularly creating other pieces of content, what that does is it allows the search engines to grasp onto it, to read that and say, okay, this blog post is about how to clean your windows. It's on a website. These other pages talk about cleaning windows too. I see all this stuff about window cleaning, and I see that they're in this area, and I see that, you know, they've got their Google My Business set up. They got their Bing Business set up. I see they're in this area. I'm going to serve that content to people who are looking for windows cleaning in that area. I have a better idea of what this website is all about and who I should serve the content to. It wasn't clear at first because there was these tiny pieces of content, but once you start generating this content, it helps to establish you on search engines. So this boosts your visibility online. The more content you produce, the more pieces that, you know, search engines can grab onto, the more likely you're going to show up in a search result over other businesses. That's what we're doing. Content in terms of SEO is teaching search engines who you are and what you do. So you want traffic to your website. You know, you need something to draw that traffic in the first place. And again, like I said earlier, pull, right? Advertising is pushing people to a website. Advertising pushes them over there. Content marketing, free content, or even low cost content is drawing people in. It's not really the cost that matters, it's the value, right? The value of the content. If they can't find content anywhere else, if that value isn't there, then they're not going to come to the website, right? But if there's this great value, you know, that content draws people to your website and it introduces them to the brand. And importantly, why do we want to build this relationship? Because eventually these people are probably going to make a purchase of some sort. They're probably going to make a purchase. And so we want to prime them for when I've got windows that are really dirty, who am I going to call? You know, who's the business I'm going to turn to when I finally have a problem that they can solve? You know, and this is talking about customer journey stuff. People who are early in the customer journey are going to have different searches online than people who are later on. So it's thinking about what kind of pieces of content are good for someone who's not even close to ready to have their windows cleaned, for example. So I might not go there until I have a problem. If they don't have any content that helps someone in the early stages, right? They may not ever go to this window and glass cleaning website. They might only go there once they have the problem. They're searching directly someone to clean glass. But what if you know, I started creating content as this business owner that helped people who were in the very early stages or weren't even looking to anything, that helped them say, okay, now, you know, I have a problem that's related to windows and glass. I have some sort of problem that's related there. And, you know, help me with that, right? So that by the time I get to, you know, I actually need someone to clean my windows and glass. By the time I get over there, I know who I'm going with. So like, let's say, you know, he makes something like, you know, like I go online and I say, okay, one of these days I'm going to need to clean my windows. They're a little dirty. But actually what I'm thinking to myself is, how can I do this on my own? How much would it cost? Or what do I need to do to clean windows. So I type that into Google and I say, what supplies do I need to clean windows? And what comes up but an article by my friends over here, the windows and glass folks, and they've written an article about how to clean windows yourself. So even though I'm not saying, okay, someone clean my windows now, I'm saying, how would I do it on my own? And even though that's not what they want, right? They want someone to pay them to clean the windows. Still, that article allows them to get someone on the page and read about it. And, maybe the article tells the truth. This is going to be laborious. You need certain pieces of equipment. You might need a really tall ladder. It's kind of dangerous. And so, by the way, you may want someone to come out here and do this, and we can do that. And you say, no, I'll clean the bottom windows and I'll get the second floor some other day. And then it turns out when I'm finally ready to do that second floor and I say, ladder's too dangerous, I'm not going to mess with that, I'll just hire these guys to do the second floor. Now I've got a sale. So when I'm ready to make that purchase, I know who I'm hiring. I don't have to go back to Google and search for windows and glass people because I already know who I'm going to work with. So without that article, I don't find my windows and glass friends who help me learn how to clean my own windows on the bottom floor. I don't know they exist. And in that earlier stage of purchasing, I don't establish that relationship so that later on down the road, the windows and glass folks are just, they're basically saying, okay, I sure hope Google serves us above someone else. And Google may not do that. They may not have the reviews to support that. They may not have enough signals to support that. So, that this content is useful and valuable. It's helped me make a purchasing decision, and I consider that, and that's part of that relationship that's been built. So, I want you also to start thinking about content more broadly. It's not just for the website. It's a marketing tool. It supports all kinds of different marketing endeavors. If I have a blog post, I've optimized it correctly, it'll eventually start showing up in search results, but there are other ways I can use the content, and there's other ways that I can support that content and get it, amplify it essentially. So I can start sharing that content with social media. Now I have something to share on social media, and they're going back to the blog post. And now that blog post is getting more views that are making search engines say, aha, people are using this, right? I can send it in an email list. It gives me something to send out to people that's useful and valuable, that's not spam, that's not, something they need, that like, buy this now, right? Not a deal. Instead, it's a useful, valuable piece of content. It makes the people on the email list happy. When you go to a website, they say, give me your email address. I say, why? Some websites, they can get away with saying, we're going to give you great deals all the time. But even those start to get pretty old after a while. When you're providing value in terms of valuable pieces of content that are teaching people, that are entertaining people, that are helping people solve problems, well, that's stuff that people want to sign up for and want to read. So, and when I say on there, not only are you going to get maybe some deals, but you're going to get some great pieces of content. I'm actually going to send you some really valuable stuff, entire ebooks, just for free, just because you're on the email list. Now suddenly that email list, not only, because this is how content, it all works together, right? It's like I have this great piece of content and I give it away for free, and that seems counterintuitive, but as someone on the other end of it, I get this amazing book that's, dozens or hundreds of pages long for free. I say, wow, I'm going to pay attention when this person sends me an email. I'm going to pay attention to what they post on Facebook. I'm not just going to let it roll over me with the thousands of other ads I see every day. So when it comes time for me to buy something, or when those people say, you know what, they ask me to take a look at a product, they say, this is something I think you should buy, I'm much more likely to listen, because I've built that relationship, because they have done what we should do in all relationships, right? They've not just taken the whole time. It's not take. They've been giving me stuff, and they've been saying, we want to be in a relationship with you. So, a relationship has been built by these emails, by these pieces of content, but PPC is also supported by this, pay-per-click ads. A lot of the time people just want to use PPC to just sell directly. That's not always appropriate. A lot of the time you can use ads on social media, on search engines, to introduce someone to the brand. And a piece of An ebook is often especially good for that with a simple landing page, but sometimes it's even a blog post where you're just sending someone to a blog post because you want a specific audience that may not know you exist to get to know your brand. So these people are pouring thousands of dollars into ads, right? A lot of the time it's doing nothing for them and they can't figure out why. And it's often because they don't have the proper piece of content paired with the ads. They're trying to sell to someone right away when what they need to be doing is establishing that relationship. The other thing to think about advertising too, when compared to content marketing doesn't go away or disappear once you stop spending money on it. I can write an ebook today, and depending on how well I've written that ebook, that might last me 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years or longer. It might be a really solid piece of work that's going to last for a long time. I've created it, I posted it, and then I just leave it alone. I don't have to keep pouring money into it like with advertising, because as soon as I stop pouring money into advertising, the traffic drops off. So it's the same with social media ads. You see ads on social media, you click on it, you're brought to this very general page. And that's another thing that we often see done wrong with ads connected to content, is they don't use a useful or valuable piece of content to connect to the ad. And that's where I think content can really support PPC, is that you have this piece of this ad, right? And then what happens? Half the time you click on one of these ads and you just end up on someone's homepage. And you're like, well, this doesn't have very much to do with what the ad said, and I click away. It's better to have an ad that's really specific to one piece of content, and they go over there and they say, okay, this ad tells me, learn 3 things about, how to increase the speed of my website. I click on that, and where do I go? I go to a blog post that says exactly that: three ways to increase the speed of your website. And I say, well, that's exactly what I expected. And I start reading it, get to know this brand, and suddenly I'm a little bit more interested in them. With PR, it's the same thing. These can be used as press releases. Press releases can be turned into blog posts and vice versa. So these things all kind of support each other and make this sort of a web of marketing content that's building on each other, that's supporting each other, and that's making and another thing I want to talk about too is this helps sales. Your salespeople are out there, and they're often, it depends on what your business is, of course, but sometimes they just need something to send to the prospect other than, hey, just following up, right? Hey, just following up, seeing how it's going. Literally, I have nothing for you. I just want to bother you again and see if you're annoyed enough to talk to me. Content allows their sales team in the beginning stages, in the middle stages, in the end stages.
Unmute me.
Allows everyone to, these salespeople to say, here's something of value for free, cost you nothing, cost me nothing. You take a look at this, and it's something that I think is going to solve maybe a problem of yours. Maybe you're just going to find it entertaining, and it helps the salesperson to have ammunition that's not bothersome, essentially. Where someone says, hey, this salesperson is actually really helping me, instead of doing that, it's saying, here's something for you. I want to form a relationship. So it's a live version of what we've been talking about, this whole time. So most people aren't just going to stumble over your website, especially at first. And even if they do, they may not necessarily find anything interesting or useful and value. And that's another thing to consider too, right? Is even you do get people who just stumble across a website. And that's not uncommon, especially once you get to a certain size. But again, the content that's on there, the stuff that's on there, there needs to be some meat to it. It needs to be clear. Sometimes it just shows people that you're alive over there and there's really people there. I went to a website one time. It was a robotics website, and it hadn't been updated since like 2015, and they had no content. And I said, oh, they must be defunct. It was a kind of a weird product they sell. And I did a little investigation, and it turns out, no, they're certainly very much in business. It's just they hadn't updated anything in years. And so, but to me, as someone who's on there looking at this stuff they're selling, well, do they even exist? I don't know. It's lucky that I really wanted to know about the product that they said, because I was willing to go back. But most people go on there and they'll say, well, there's nothing here for me, and they'll click away and they'll literally never go back. And you'll lose these people. So with that, I'm going to turn things back over to Heather.
So hopefully Adam has made a really good case that content is something that's worth investing your time and energy in. Hopefully no one's out there like playing a shot game every time that Adam says the word content, because you might be dead by now. So I'm gonna keep talking about this and get really specific about the types of content that you need to be able to take people through that customer journey. So from the time that they're just discovering you all the way to they're suddenly your biggest advocate and helping you get referrals and, you know, sending more business your way. So I think that, you know, before we can really dive in and start thinking about these specific pieces of content that you really need to have for your website, I want you to stop and back up a little bit. And let's start with the actual why. Why does your organization even exist? Why do you, or the founder, or whoever started your business, why did they do it? What was the thing that was making them so crazy that they hated about the industry, or that they couldn't stand to see happening, or that they were so excited about that they decided to risk everything and start a business? If you don't know what that why is, and I'm going to address one of the questions that came through in the chat. Marcy, you asked about nonprofits, and I think that this is so relevant to your question, is knowing this why your organization even exists. If you don't have every single person that works under your company or that's affiliated with you understanding why you're there, and able to really speak that to customers and potential clients and partners, then any of this other content that you're creating, it's just not going to have the depth that you really need to make it work. It's just going to be that really mundane sales copy of features and pricing, and it's not going to connect on that emotional level with people. So you've really got to understand, why does my organization even exist? Why am I here? What are we working towards? What the heck is it that makes us want to do this job that we're in? And it's probably not like, if we think back to Adam's example of Wow Windows, like his friend probably didn't start that business because he was super obsessed with clean windows. I think that's what a lot of people go to when they're writing this kind of content about their mission statement or why they exist or why they're, you know, a better choice than someone else, is they kind of go to this place of like, well, I'm so obsessed with what we do that, you know, we have to do this as a business and we have to offer this. But really, there's typically more of a story there. There's more background. So using Adam's friend that has the window cleaning business as an example, you know, maybe his friend really is just super OCD and he loves nothing more than cleaning windows. But I really doubt that. I'm going to bet that the scenario was more like maybe he saw that someone in the area was way overcharging for this cleaning service and under delivering, and it made him mad. And he thought, that's not right, and there's a better way to do this. Or maybe someone came to his own house and ripped him off, and he felt like he wanted to make a change so that his neighbors and friends and people in the community didn't have that same experience. Or maybe he was an appraiser and he was going around and seeing all these homes that weren't appraising as high as they should because people weren't taking care of the exterior of their home. And he saw that just a little bit of upkeep, including keeping those windows clean and maintained, was going to really increase the value of what people could get for their homes. Whatever that why is, whatever made him go out and decide that he was going to start this business, decide I'm going to quit my day job, I'm going to go grab some of my buddies and buckets and soap and whatever else they use, and we're going to go clean windows. Whatever that reason was, they all need to understand it and feel it for any of this content that we're suggesting you create to actually work. And that should really be every single person within your company, not just your marketing team, but really your sales team, the people that are supporting your customers and clients. Everyone should feel that same connection to why you're there. If you've never read the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek, I would definitely check it out. It is an awesome read. It'll go really deep into this concept of why your why is so important, and how it really just makes you stand out and be a completely different company than your competitors, because you'll have a very different approach and a different way of thinking about your business and how you introduce your business. Even if you're just starting out, if you are just here because you've got a side hustle and you're wanting to make this part-time gig something that generates a little bit of income, maybe you don't have any clients besides your mama, go ahead and start with why. Don't jump into trying to just make dollars add up. Start with the why you're there and really understand that story before you go any further, because then all of your marketing, all your efforts are going to go so much further. So once you've established that why, we can start to think about the sales process. So now I know that in the year 2018, sales processes aren't always this clean, linear fashion that we've typically looked at. I'm sure you guys have all seen like the old sales funnel where you put a ton of leads at the top and then a few good accounts come out through the bottom. And through that process, you're kind of, weeding out people that aren't a good fit or who don't have the budget, or maybe they're not ready to buy. I'm going to go ahead and use that terminology because I think it still applies for the most part to what we're talking about here. And it's just a good way to think about how we're going to target people and communicate with them as they've got these different levels of knowing our business and being ready to buy from us. So the first thing we need to do is attract people into the business. So like Adam said, there's a lot of ways that you can be doing that. Maybe you have a business or a product that's so common that it's almost like a commodity. And so people know that the product or the service exists. You just need to get them to your website and you need them to interact with you so they can understand maybe why you're better or different. Or maybe you have a service or a product that's completely different than what anyone has ever seen or what anyone understands or that they could, really be considering using for themselves. Regardless of where you're at with your offering, or even if you're a nonprofit, right? So even if what you're offering is a service or you're trying to work with donors, to increase funds that are available to serve your clients. It really doesn't matter because what we need to do first is come up with stories or pieces of content that are really highly relevant to our audience so that we can attract them back to our website, whether that be through search engine optimization, the people are finding it through just naturally coming up with their search results, or if they're seeing it on social media or people are sharing it with them because they've got it, through an email. We need to create these stories or these pieces of content that draw them in and make them want to learn more. So you're going to show that you understand what their needs are in relation to what you're offering, but instead of using that content to start pitching them right away, you're going to educate them or entertain them, or you're going to give them some interesting information and useful data that they can use in their day-to-day business or their day-to-day life. So you're going to start giving them that value, the information that runs kind of in tangent to your offering instead of being a big push for your offering. So going back to Adam's example of the how to clean your own windows, right? That was a great example of how to bring these people who are potentially your customers into your website through something they're already probably interested in, but not start pitching them right away. You're not going to say how to clean your windows. Well, it's really hard, so call me and I'll do it for you. That's not the way that you're going to attract people and make them really want to work with you. You're going to bring them in. You're going to tell them step by step, here is how you do that. Here's how you clean your windows and how you can be really successful in doing that yourself. You also want to make sure at this stage of the game that your content is staying away from that very typical, list of benefits, the pricing, the things that make it feel very salesy. You want to keep it educational and informational, and you're really just trying to create a connection with someone. So think about it like if I'm just meeting you, I'm not going to say, hey, we do content marketing and this is what it costs and here's what our contract looks like and are you ready to sign? Instead, I might meet you and I might say, here's some great information that I think would help you in your business. And I don't know, maybe I would invite you to a webinar where I can impress you with how smart I am, and then maybe you'll want to work with me. Might be a good tactic to follow. And then when you're thinking about this content, it doesn't have to be just a blog post. So like I mentioned, this webinar, right? Like this is a great example of content marketing that's going to introduce you to our brand and to Inspirity's brand, create a warm connection through us, hopefully, entertain you a little bit, I hope, and to give you some great information that you can start applying to your business. So your content could be webinars, it could be videos, it could be the social media content that you're sharing. It's really popular right now for people to do those long form stories on LinkedIn. I don't know if y'all have seen those, but it's like you start to read it and it's one sentence and then one sentence and one sentence. And you have to click more to read the rest of it. And you can't stand them, at least I can't, because I think it's a really annoying tactic, but it works because your biochemistry is telling you that you have to finish reading that story and you have to keep going to read the whole thing. These are great ways to, introduce your brand in a way that is not a hard pitch. It's not coming on too strong. It's really just attracting people through something that educates, informs, or even entertains them and starts to introduce your brand to them. So once we've got our content that's going to attract people, and it's not like this is a checkoff, right? Like, okay, I've created my attracting content. Now I move on to my converting content. As you're going through, every week or month or however often you're able to produce new content for your site, you need to kind of be thinking about these different buckets that things can fall into and making sure you're doing a good job of covering all your bases. So I don't want you to think that it's, okay, I created a piece of content to attract people, now I'm done and I'm going to create a piece of content that converts. It's cyclical. You want to keep doing these things over and over. But once you do have people that have, come to your website, they've been attracted to you, you want to start thinking about the kind of content that will convert them. And when I say convert, I'm really talking about they're ready to get on your email list. They're ready to, give you their email address in exchange for some piece of content. Or they're ready to, interact with a chat bot, or they're ready to fill out a form on your website. I want you to be thinking about the kinds of things that you can offer that are going to take people to that level. So this is where we can get a little bit more specific and we can start teaching them more about what we specifically do and about the services that we offer and the fact that, hey, outside of being these super smart people that are willing to tell you everything we knew and we're willing to give you all these great resources and content and blog posts, we also do a really good job of offering these services or products. So you may want to go check that out while you're here. So we start to bring in, the more information about how we work, maybe why we exist, going back to that why, and why we're a little bit different than others in the marketplace. So converting content is a great place to bring in testimonials and case studies, any other content that's going to show people how to do something that's more specific to your business, maybe teach them a skill or teach them a process to use with your product or service. And you also want to be sure that you're showing them that you're trustworthy and that you're someone that is safe to interact with. So typically this content is still happening on the website. It might be on your blog, or you might be sending them to download like a report or a white paper or some other valuable piece of information in exchange for their email address. Or maybe you've started moving the conversation online from like a general news feed in your social media to a more private conversation where you can start to interact with them. The key thing is, though, you've got to earn their trust first. So, for example, who likes it when you go on LinkedIn and someone sends you a connection request and within moments you get this message back that's like, hey, if you need web development or SEO services or content marketing or software design, well, we do all that and here's my price list. It's super annoying, right? Nobody likes that. That's the best way to get unfollowed, blocked, reported, is to just bombard people with all that information right off the bat. But that's what a lot of us are tempted to do with our website and our content that we write for our website. So we don't want to do that. We want to gain their trust first, start that interaction, start moving them towards these pieces of content that will naturally convert them. And then once we've gotten them converted, they're on our email list, we're talking with them, maybe we've set up a phone call or an in-person meeting, or we've started to use a chat feature to talk back and forth with them. Now's the point that we're ready to start moving them towards a close. Now, this is going to look very different for everyone depending on your sales model. Some people may be selling a $5 widget that this is going to be quick, churn and burn, easy to go through the cycle over and over. And some of us may be selling a $500,000 service or product that's going to take much longer to work them through the sales cycle. So don't think of it so much as, well, as soon as they've converted, I'm able to close. That's going to depend on your specific sales cycle. You may also have some automated processes, or maybe passing things off to an account rep at this point, or someone that does sales internally. So regardless of what that looks like, I'm going to talk to you about how you can take content that you're creating and really focus it down to these people that you're trying to close, that you're trying to sell something to, you're trying to, win that big donation, you're trying to close the contract. So this kind of content needs to be very specific to that individual person or that individual organization's needs. So by this time in your sales process, you've probably gotten some information about them. You know probably where they work or who they're affiliated with. You're able to do some research and look into what kind of business that is, or you may be able to figure out what some of their needs are, and then you can start to customize some content for them. So for example, case studies that are really relevant to a specific prospect would be a great example of content you can use at this stage of the game. Going back to Adam's friend, I think he could do this by maybe he goes through and when he does an estimate for someone to clean their windows, he takes pictures of the outside of the house, and maybe he uploads those pictures to a site where someone can Photoshop the windows to make them look really clean. So when he delivers back the estimate, he can show them a before and after of what their windows will look like once they're super clean. Or maybe he could, go to other houses in the area and show a house that he already did a before and after on in their same neighborhood. And he can say, look, these people paid me $200 to clean their windows. We had their house reappraised. It appraised for X dollars more. It looked so much better. Don't you want to do this yourself? So you can create these really highly specific pieces of content that are going to help you, build that trust faster, help people understand exactly what it is that you can help them with, and you're going to move them through your sales funnel a lot faster. When it comes to larger organizations, you may have a sales team. You may have people that are sort of taking over after you've generated the lead as the marketer. Now you're passing it off to the salesperson. So you can actually teach them how to customize the content so that they're using it, like Adam said, to add value to the sales process. They're not just doing this constant, hey, I'm just following up. Hey, did you get my proposal? Hey, I just wanted to follow up. Hey, can I get an update? It's very annoying for people to be sold to in that way. But if what they're doing is taking these pieces of content that you as the marketing team have created and they're customizing it to their accounts that they're working with, and they're saying, here's this case study that I think is really similar to what we're trying to do with you. I think it's going to help you push this project up the chain. I think it's going to help you get buy-in internally. I've customized it for you so that it has all the same KPIs and data points we've been discussing, and they deliver that to their prospect. That's going to go a long way in getting them closed faster. Or maybe it's even just as simple as, sitting down with one of your current customers that's really similar to a prospect you're working with and interviewing them about how they're using the products or services that you've sold, and sending that interview over to your new prospect and just saying, hey, I sold this guy this product that you and I are talking about 6 months ago. I just sat down with him and had lunch. We made a quick video where I asked him about how it's working out, how he's using the product. And he was totally fine with me sharing this with you because he's so happy with it that he thinks you will be too. So you can really create these very specific pieces of content that are going to help people understand exactly what they're getting when they work with you and help them get to that sale point much faster. So then once you've closed the deal, it's very easy to feel like you're done, right? You've got the money, you've delivered the product, you're finished. You don't need to do anything else content-wise. You've got everything you need from start to finish. But that's not really the case. Once you've converted someone, there's this next step that most people forget about. And actually, most people focus on just the content that's going to attract people to them. And then they forget that they need to work through these other stages of converting them to a lead and then actually closing the sale. But it's very rare that we see people that remember to come back and actually do the work that's going to take your customer and turn them into a raving fan of yours. So when we get to this point, we've already worked with someone, hopefully they've had a positive experience. We're ready to turn them into really part of our marketing force. So some ways that you can do this would be, first of all, take what your customer is doing with the product or service that they've bought from you and showcase how awesome they've made it. So maybe, with Adam's friend's example, let's say that he came out, cleans all the windows, and that inspires his customer to go and get some new landscaping put in their house. So he comes back by to take after pictures of the windows and sees, wow, they've really upped their game with this landscaping. The house looks gorgeous. He takes pictures, shares that on Instagram, gives them a huge shout out on how awesome they are as being some of his favorite customers. And they've done this amazing job of making the outside of their home just look beautiful. If he shares that on Instagram, I guarantee if he tags his customers or if they see this, they're going to reshare it. It's going to make them feel really good because they've basically just gotten this shout out about how awesome they are. They're going to share that with their friends. They're going to make sure that everybody that they know sees it. Another way that you can do this is, let's say that you're working with a business and they, purchase a product from you and they're really just killing it. They're taking that product and they are doing awesome things with it. So in this case, maybe you create some dual pieces of content. One would be more of a case study that you can use for people that are in your own pipeline that's just highlighting, how they're using this product that they've bought from you to be successful in their business. The other piece of content that you would create would be to really highlight how amazing your client is in the way that they're using your product. Or maybe, if we go back to the nonprofit, maybe we highlight someone who is just making a huge impact in the community and is really living out your message. And so you create, a case study or a blog post or something that just really highlights them as these amazing people that are just doing great things. And then you let them know, hey, I featured you in this white paper. I featured you in this blog post. We would love for you to share this with other people who are, like you, with your colleagues or friends, because I think that this is going to help us to really attract more awesome customers or more awesome donors like you. So you've got to really, create that content for them. Even going as far as to say, we've done this from time to time when we write maybe a blog post or we write a piece of content and we realize, we're kind of channeling one of our customers when we wrote this. We have this one client, Beth, who we just absolutely love. She's one of our favorite people in the world, and she's got a very specific voice. She's a very excitable person. So sometimes when I write something, I feel like, this kind of sounds like something that Beth would say. It would just fall right out of her mouth. So I'm going to send it to her. I'm going to say, Beth, I wrote this about some things that we're doing internally, but I was really kind of channeling you when I wrote it. And I would just so appreciate it if you would share this with your network. Read it, and if it's something that you agree with, I would really just love for you to share it. The key here is to make it so simple and easy for people to become your advocates, to become your raving fans. You're going to put everything in their lap that they need. You're going to make them look like superstars. You're going to highlight them as some of the smartest people taking your services and products and building on top of them, doing great things, community leaders who are not just your donors and are helping to fund the things that you're passionate about, but they are doing amazing things in the community as well. By doing these things and giving them these resources, you're really kind of turning them into your unofficial marketing team. And I would just say that when you have this relationship, when you start to see that people are sharing that content, they're really taking part and making sure that they're sharing your social media posts or they're sending you those great referrals, you need to tell them that they are really a part of your success. You need to make sure that they know that you love working with people like them, and that when they send you those referrals and when they send your social media posts out and when they forward your emails on, that it really helps your business and that it helps you grow and that you see them as a part of your team. Putting that level of responsibility on them is actually a great way to create this positive connection where they feel responsible for helping you to grow your business and keeping those referrals coming and continuing to share. be very transparent and honest about how important that is to you. And then the other thing that you want to do is make sure that you're not just getting all of the benefits of this relationship. Like Adam said, you know, you can't just be take. If you see that certain people are always commenting or sharing your post, if you see that they're always sending you referrals, you know, just really doing a great job of helping you out, then you need to think about how you can help them out as well. So maybe you've got an affiliate program and you want to set up a way to give them a kickback on every sale that they're referring to you. Or maybe it's just some kind of awesome gift that you're sending out to them. You know, you've got someone who's always just really interacting well, sending you those great referrers. You know, they're always seeming to have your back. Maybe you have them like a cool customized coffee mug made. Not something generic with your logo on it that, you know, you give to everybody. Make something really cool for them and send it to them with a note that tells them how much, you know, their participation in your business really means to you. At the very least, address in person or with a handwritten note just how much you appreciate them, thank them for being so active, and then continue to show your appreciation over time. There's nothing worse than having this one-sided relationship where they're always helping you out, but you're never using your brand to help them out. So maybe even sit down and think about, you know, who are these people who are always supporting you, who are always being really great about sharing your content, about sending you those referrals, and think about what you can do to help them in their business life or your personal life, and do it. See if you can send them good referrals. See if you can help them in some way that's going to make a big difference to them. So Adam, I'm going to turn back over to you here to talk real quickly about some reasons that this might not be working. Are you there, Adam?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, my internet dropped out for just a second, but I'm here.
Okay, great.
So anyway, why your content isn't working. So before we talk about that, I want to talk about some actionable pieces of information just for creating content in general. So for a blog post, about 500 words is the minimum. Some people will tell you 300. I don't think that's long enough, and honestly 500 is really low too. That was really good 5 years ago. We're not there anymore. So I would say honestly 500 is a very bare minimum, but I would say more like 750. The reason for that is simple. There's just a lot more content out there today. It's a lot more, it's a lot longer. People have been playing the content game for years now, and they've been consistently like, how do you beat someone who's in a top ranked spot? You write, generally speaking, you write something that's longer and more involved. And so a lot of the top ranking pieces of content these days, they clock in around the 1900 word area. So that's why I say if you can get to 750, that's more like a bare minimum. 1,000's great. 2,000 is probably what you're going to want to try to do. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, holy crap, you know, that's a lot. And it is. You know, if you think it's about, depending on how you write, about 300 words to a page. So we're starting to get into the, you know, 6, 7, 8 pages for a blog post. If you're trying to put 2, 3, 4, 5 of these out a week, that's a lot of writing. It's doable. But the point of it that is more important is how valuable that content is. A word count is not super important. It's just one of the things we look at. So the longer it is, that usually means it's more involved. And when you, practically speaking, when someone asks questions, a lot of the time you need to talk a little bit about it to really explain it in depth and fully. So it's okay, you know, if you're looking at, do I put out content constantly, or do I need to just be, you know, am I posting enough, or am I making this longer content? Generally speaking, it's better to spend a lot of time on a blog post. But another thing we do see a lot is that people say, oh, okay, well, I need to spend all this time on a blog post, right? But then they don't do that, and then they don't post, and then they're not posting on any sort of schedule. And we see this a lot. People aren't posting enough. You know, they should be posting They set, and again, it's like, what is the expectation you've set up with your audience? If the expectation you've set up with your audience is that they're going to get a blog post once a week, and that's probably about a minimum too, about once a week, and then you don't post for 3 weeks, you start to lose audience members. If they have an expectation that you're going to post, 3 times a week, and then you only post once a week, and then once every other week, you start to lose the audience, right? Or you ruin your own efforts of trying to build an audience who's coming back consistently every Tuesday or every Friday or every whatever to read your stuff. So that's important. We can talk about video for just a little bit. Video is a form of content marketing. There's really a bunch of categories for that. Really short videos, 30 to 60 seconds. Those are good for social media, especially really valuable for social media and for advertising for that matter. And then you kind of have these segments, 0 to 60 seconds, 1 to 5 minutes. Those things are good for, you can start to put those into blog posts or pages. 5 minutes is like, people aren't probably going to watch that much on social media, not very often. 5 to 15 minutes, that's getting to the point where it's like almost needs its own page, but these are great for sending out on emails or embedding in a static page, right? And then 15 minutes to an hour, this is where you're getting stuff where like the video is why people are coming to you. You got these longer videos where the podcaster who is taking a video of their podcast, so these are the things where a webinar like what we're doing now that has been turned into a very long video that started as something live. These things, take up their own space on the website. They get their own page. They get a transcript. Transcripts are really important with video today. And that's not just so that Google can figure out what you're doing. It is, but it's also from an accessibility standpoint. I mean, people who are unable to watch the video are unable to hear the video. People who need a different format or are using a screen reader, right? Transcripts help a lot with that. You need some schema around there generally so that the search engines know what they're looking at. But so there's that. Not posting enough, can be a very serious problem. It's the same with social media, and when you have these big gaps in your posts, people start to wonder what's going on. In terms of how often you should post, it's just like with the length. The more you can do it, the better. You just have to do whatever you can handle, basically. In terms of they say you should be posting, I mean, if you want to go to the high end of it, like 2 or 3 blog posts a day, that's crazy. Very few people can do that. You need a whole team to do that. I'd say if you're doing it once a week, once or twice a week, that's pretty good. And it's okay if, some of your blog posts are a little bit shorter throughout the week and then you have one solid one. Or if you have a few weeks where you got a bunch of shorter blog posts, and then you're using this time to make a bigger one to go down the road or to go back, and update blog posts that already exist and add content to them. Google likes to see that too. Frequency is important. Because again, we want people to come back to the website. So if you're really infrequent, you're really random with how you're posting, it's hard to get people to continue to come back to the website. Especially when you're doing it at bizarre frequencies. So another problem that comes up a lot is thin content, and that doesn't just mean content that's short in terms of the 300 words, the 500 words. That's not necessarily thin. It's more like, does it answer the question or not? And usually that's correlated to some extent with the amount of words in the content. But not necessarily. So one thing to keep in mind is that you could have a 2,000 word blog post of fluff. You could have an extra 1,000 words that don't need to be in there. So it's how valuable is that content? And all of us have read blog posts that were very long, or anything, right? An article, an ebook, that were very long but had a bunch of fluff in it that wasn't very helpful, and we've read much shorter stuff or seen very short videos that packed a lot into one space. So that, put that valuable stuff in the front if you feel like you have to have some fluff in there for whatever reason. If you're going to put salesy stuff in there, very end, after all the value has been delivered, you might have some some calls to action at a call to action at the end that's salesy. And then, but even within the blog post, it's better to link to other pieces of content. Within a video, it's better to have them say, watch another video, in most cases, not all. As Heather was talking about, you have all these different types of content. Content that converts is probably going to want to be pushing a conversion, but even still. All right, so another problem you run into is it's consistent with that thin theme, right? The value isn't there, you see this all the time where there's a tiny bit of value, or the content's really vague, right? It covers the subject, but it's vague about it. It doesn't tell you what you're really trying to figure out. It's like, okay, I want to read, or they put up barriers, like paywalls and stuff like that. And the thing you have to keep in mind is we live in an age where people expect so much of this stuff to be free. And a lot of those people who are expecting it, they can be kind of rude about those expectations, and expect everything for free. So you have to make this balance, right, between what you're giving away, and how much value you're putting into it, and how much value people really are willing to pay for. The news is a perfect example of doing this wrong. Basically at this point, can read news stories for free online. But you have all these newspapers that continue to put these paywalls up. And I don't know what they think they're doing, but this is like that people don't see that content as valuable enough to pay money for it in most cases. So anyway, the point is that you really need to pack some value in there if you can. And then keep in mind, keep it at the top. Most people are going to watch half a video. They're going to read half an article. They're going to look over half an infographic, and it's the top half, so keep in mind that, you want to front load your value on these things. Another problem people come into is the lack of distribution. So we see this all the time. Someone has a website where nobody visits it. They write a blog post. That's their only blog post for the month. They don't write anything. They don't email it out because they don't have an email list. They don't share it on social media. They don't email it to their friends. Like, there are a lot of things they don't have any ads pointing to it. If you have a website that has been generating traffic for a while, you can kind of get away with slacking on the distribution, but especially when you don't have much going on in the first place, you need to get it out there. Social media is a great for this. And just emailing people, friends, and saying, hey, take a look at this, share that. I think this might be of value to you, or prospects, who you think might be a good fit. And again, this, it all flows together, right? At someone who may be a sales prospect, you send them this piece of content. Now they're looking at it, right? The problem that people run into is they're not distributing it. They don't want to share it on social media. When they do, they just pump it out there. They don't reach out to influencers or micro influencers. They don't take the necessary steps to get it in front of people, and then, or they do that once and they're like, oh, that was exhausting, I'll never do it again. And it's like, you can't do that. You have to keep doing this stuff. You have to send it out over and over. It takes time to build those relationships, for people to start naturally sharing your content, to start looking at it. A lot of the time, what I'm doing when I write something is I'm sending an email to someone, or I'm tagging them in it and say, hey, I think you'd really like this, and take a look at it. So that's another problem that we run into, and it, again, this all depends on what you're creating, who you're creating it for. A lot of people get really distraught in the B2B because they're like, no one's coming. And it's like, you have a very small audience. You're just not going to get a lot of people reading this, period. Most people don't care about this. They don't, because it's not relevant to them. You have a much smaller audience, so you need to consider that too. And so with that, I'll hand it back over to Heather.
So hopefully we've given you the information and ideas of, what you need to be writing about, what kinds of content you can produce. And I hope you've gotten the inspiration to really move outside of the typical box of just telling people about your products and services and the prices, And you're really focusing on these stories and these pieces of content that can help you create a better connection with the people that you want to do business with. So like I said at the beginning, you have the ability within you to create these amazing connections with people who, they could become your audience, or they might become your customers or your users or your partners. All you have to do is go out there and just do it. You have the ability. You have it within you, so don't waste that. Take the time, do it the right way, really focus on using storytelling and using the topics that we went over today in your content. So I know we've got a few minutes here left, and I think Adam and I can stick around for a while longer for questions. We've got a couple that have already been sent in, but if you have a question, go ahead and add that to the chat box so we can make sure that we cover it. I'm just going to pull this up and go back up to the top here. So Adora had a great question. She said, what's the best way, what's the best platform for producing content for a new business? And I'm going to assume by platform she means like where to publish it. And I would say even a brand new business, there's a very low barrier to entry to setting up your own website.
Yeah.
You can almost do it for free. There's really no reason not to. So any business or anyone who's going to be creating content to try to use in any sort of sales or business development use, go ahead and get that website set up. Even if it's not perfect, even if it's not beautiful, even if it's something that you're going to scrap and start over with at some point, what you want to do is start really building on your own domain. Relying on LinkedIn or Facebook pages, I think that's really a recipe for disaster, because then you don't have as much control. You're fighting an algorithm on getting people to see that, even if they've said already that they want to see it. So you might as well start building that on your own domain and on your own website.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Would you add anything to that, Adam?
Well, no, I mean, it's just really keep that in mind, because you see people who get invested in like LinkedIn or YouTube is especially bad about it, right? They get really invested in a platform where they're putting out, and they don't have their own website, they don't have their own stuff. There's nothing wrong with using those platforms, but having your own is so important. On YouTube, we just had not too long ago, they came out and they said everyone who's got below this number of subscribers or below this number of views, no more money, you're out. And they basically just killed off this huge swath of producers who are making small amounts of money. And like, these are people who had invested time in it. They made all these videos. They've been really working toward it. They were getting a little money. They were starting to feel like this is really working for me. And then suddenly YouTube said, boop, sorry, good luck. And so these people, their income just disappeared overnight. And so that's why it can be dangerous to invest in these types of platforms as the sole place that you're doing your stuff. Because you're at their mercy. If YouTube turns around tomorrow and says to, some of their top producers, well, we're cutting you off because this just happened to some guy a while back. He said something racist in a video, and they said, we're cutting you off. Now, whether we agree or disagree for why that happened, the practical fact is this guy who's making a lot of money on YouTube suddenly had his income cut off because of something he had no control over. If he had his own website, that would be different. So it's something that you really got to keep in mind, is that these other platforms, they're useful to spread your content, but you ultimately want people coming back to a place that you own, your home, that you don't have to worry about some other entity taking it away from you.
So the next question we have is from David, and he says, what's the best formula for creating content? David, if you're still around and you want to clarify that question, if our answers don't quite fit what you're going for there, please do so. But I'm going to say there's really no formula to it. Now, there's definitely a way for, writing with the intent of ranking for certain keywords, and I think that is a totally different webinar topic all on its own. But as far as, a formula for creating content, I think the first place to start, if you're sitting down and you're thinking, what the heck am I even going to write about? Like, how am I going to accomplish this? Start with thinking about the most common questions that people ask you. What are people asking you all the time, day in and day out, about your product or service? And start there. Start with just answering those questions in a really clear and educational way. And then maybe from there, you can move into what are some of the common objections, or what are some of the common concerns, and start addressing those through your content. Do you have any other suggestions for that, Adam?
Yeah. Everyone has a process. It depends on what you're creating. Personally, I like to start with keywords. I like to start with looking up what people are searching that has to do with what we do, and then using those keywords to drive the content rather than trying to create the content and then come back and optimize it. A lot of the time that can go poorly. So having the keyword, and plus that tells you what people want to know. What are they looking for? What information do they need? It helps me to come up with blog topics in the first place, and video topics, and infographic topics. If people are searching for these things, that means there's a need out there that can be fulfilled, rather than me doing the classic blunder, right? Is I'm creating a product that fixes a problem nobody has. I'm creating content that answers a question nobody has. Instead, I want to answer questions that people have. So that is where I would say, and the same thing goes with for stuff later in the sales cycle, asking people, or just learning while you're doing this throughout the sales cycle, what questions do these people have that I could create a piece of content that would answer that, or that would help them with that. What problems do they have that I could solve with some content for the next guy down the line?
Awesome. And just to give a little bit more information there on the keywords, that's something that, not everybody has keyword research tools, but anybody can go to Google and start typing in what you think people would ask about your business, and see what the Google search suggest pops up with. That's going to let you know what's really common phrases. So if you start to type, trying to think, I think you, David, are in the financial industry. So maybe if you start to type, how do I open a Roth IRA, right? And then see what other suggestions is Google giving you around that, and use those as good topics. And then scroll to the very bottom of the first page of search results, and you'll see a bunch of suggested keywords there, things that other people search for that are similar. And those are going to give you some really great topics as well.
And let me add real quick, and I'm going to put this in the chat. I just found a new-ish tool for keyword research that Neil Patel has. Now, it's free for the moment, and I checked it out. It's pretty powerful. It may not remain. It probably won't remain free, knowing him. But for now, it's free, and I would check that out. Another good one is KW Finder. That's also allows you to have a couple free searches a day. So, and that's usually enough to at least get an idea of what, because half the time you don't even know what people are searching. So, check those tools out.
Definitely. And we'll send that out in the follow-up email as well. So the next question was from Marcy about relating this whole process to nonprofit. And what question, problem are we answering for the user? So hopefully some of the examples that I gave when we went through, helped relate this back to you in the nonprofit world. But I think you've really got to go back to, defining who it is that you're trying to serve, and who it is that, are your donors, and any other audiences that kind of fall in between there. So typically we spend a lot of time talking about brand and audience when we talk about content, and we just didn't have the time to cover it today. But defining really clearly who is it that you need to communicate with to make your organization successful, and then figuring out what's important to them. So, whether it's on the side of the client side of who you're serving, what's going to make them trust you, want to work with you, tell other people that you're great, spread the word in the community, use your services and the way that you envision them to. Maybe you can start making lists of that type of content and see what's appropriate to create around that. If it's your donors, then again, try to put yourself in their shoes as far as what's going through their mind when they're trying to determine, who's going to receive their corporate giving, who's going to be the ones that they partner with on events that they want to donate, a portion of the proceeds to, and what are the things that are going through their mind that they want to kind of check off and make sure are being met and make it a really good match and create content around that. I think also something that really is helpful for nonprofits is to take their mission statement and what they're all about and tie those directly to stories that show the success of what they're doing and make that a really, really clear connection. A lot of times I see nonprofits that get very, up in the air with what they're about and what their purpose is. And then the end result of what actually is being done in the community or being done for individuals, it just doesn't come through. So take that mission statement or that purpose statement and really directly tie it to those success stories so that people can understand the whole process of, where their funds are going, how their donations impact the community or the people that you're serving, and then who are those people? What's the outcomes? What are the success stories? I think can help you create some really great content that's going to help people to understand your needs and to want to be part of your organization. Do you add anything to that, Adam?
Yeah, I mean you hit all the nails on the head. From a content creation standpoint, it's just, with nonprofits, you have some very clear and very different audiences. And when you're creating content for them, you really have to think about that. For example, there's a nonprofit in Denton that serves addiction and alcoholism. And so it helps people with that, right? And so you have to think about who are the different people they have a bunch of sober living facilities. So you have to think about who are the different people. There are some donors, right? That's one audience, and you're gonna need content for them that's quite different from what you're gonna serve to. And a lot of people think, well, we just need to write content that's directly for the clients they're gonna serve. And while some of that's true, you got to think about the family and friends. That's probably almost more important, because a lot of times, who's going to be bringing these people in? They're not going to come in themselves a lot of the time. They're being pushed in by family and friends. So content that helps them too. So just thinking about, and both of these can be, now there's overlap, right? There'll be people who, maybe once were in that facility and then they become donors, or parents who had someone go in there at one time and they become donors. So there's some overlap there too, but you really have to consider, you really got to spend some time breaking down these audiences and figuring out what is the content that we can produce that helps each one. Because each audience is looking for different stuff. Some people are looking at how can I help? Some people are saying, how can I get help? Some people are saying, how can I help my son? So you have to think about what are these different, what do these different users need? What is it that they're searching for? What are the questions that they have? And then trying to answer those. And sometimes you might even split that up on the website, sort of information for donors, information for clients, information for, and the clients might have, there are all kinds of nonprofits that help people who, are struggling with one problem or another, right? A client that they may need a separate, area on the website once they become clients, content and that's another thing we didn't really talk about, but just briefly, content for the people who have become customers to help them be successful in whatever they're doing. Content to help your someone who's bought your software as a service make the most out of it. Content to help your clients at the sober living facility to succeed in their endeavor, right? So content that for the windows and glass people, so that they can upkeep their windows. If you replace their foggy windows, and how to make sure they don't get your new ones don't get foggy. So stuff like that.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any more questions in the chat box, so I guess we've either lost you or we've answered all of your questions already. We'll be sending everything out in an email, hopefully later today or first thing tomorrow, with a recap, a recording of this video, so you can watch it all over again if you decide you'd like to. And we hope that you will share this with your colleagues and other people you think would find it beneficial. And we appreciate your time today.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks.